Hello and welcome to the Anomaly Project, the show that looks at all aspects of the paranormal and anomalous world. I'm Marcus Lowth, and joining me as he does every week is living legend Steve Mera. Now, Steve, it's going to be a cracking show tonight. We're going to venture into UFO territory again.
Well,
How you doing, my friend?
I absolutely brilliant. Yeah, and I know I've known Dave for a long time, and his work, which is exceptional. And we have sat down a few times actually, even over in our offices and doing interviews and things. And his work is amazing, you know. And it's a shame, you know. I often look back at people all around throughout the United Kingdom and the groups and the things that I've done, but Dave, he's just he is relentless, to be honest with you, and his work is great. So it's always interesting to listen to some of his work. Really
Yeah,
is.
it's going to be a cracking show. Now, our guest tonight, then, as we alluded to there, is UFO researcher and investigator and the chairman of Birmingham UFO Group, excuse me, Dave Hodrien. Dave, thank you very much for joining us. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm great. Thank you, Marcus. It's wonderful to be back chatting with you guys.
That's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to have you on. I think the best place to start, Dave, is what dragged you into all this? What really, sparked something in your mind that made you think, I need to investigate this stuff, as opposed to
Uh,
just like, being an
yeah,
enthusiast, for example.
yeah. I mean, if we're going right back, it's just that passion and drive. Where did that come from? Just a deep interest in the reality of what was going on with this subject. And I think when you get to a certain point in looking into the evidence available, you sort of hit a tipping point, yeah, where you're like, wow, this genuinely is going on, yeah.
Mm.
And it can't fail to be fascinating from that point onwards. Now, I know some people may be into the subject really heavily for a number of years, and then they'll kind of might move on to other things and that sort of thing. But for me, it was always kind of there at the back of my mind to actively investigate this and be on the front lines. And decades ago, I just remember going to conferences and seeing. I probably saw talks from Steve
Yeah.
and others, and just thinking just how fascinating that would be to just be there on the front lines and just talk to witnesses directly who are having these experiences, and maybe inadvertently have experiences happen as a result of that close connection with people who are having things going on. And that's one of the sort of main driving forces for me, just the ongoing fascination in what's truly happening with this on a global scale. And when Birmingham UFO Group came into being back in 2007, seems a long time ago now, doesn't it? Ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
That was my driving force, just to become an investigator for that group. I could have done it a lot sooner, of course, but yeah, I quite like the idea of being an investigator for a particular group. So that's how that began, and it's something that's stayed with me ever since.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, Steve, we speak to a lot of people, don't we, about how they get into the subject and stuff like that. I mean, you know, uh, UFOs particularly, they just kind of draw you in, don't they? I mean,
Well,
what?
they do. They do draw you in. I mean, some people are drawn from having an experience, of course, you know.
Yeah,
And even though that they might kind of, oh well, try and put it to bed, always tends to resurface sometime later down in life, and you're kind of drawn to the subject. You know, maybe there's a reason for. I've argued that point that, you know, do people have experiences so that eventually your track does change and you end up on a more appropriate track, and maybe the phenomena wants you to sort of do that sort of thing. Who knows? Initiated experiences, I do think, you know, do take place. And I've seen Dave lecture a lot of times in a lot of places. He's done some great work. I'm talking about music. You know, he's done an excellent lecture on music and the influence of the subject within it. And not just that, you know, some people who have literally been influenced themselves seemingly by phenomena, which has been assistful for them in regarding the creation of songs, writing music, that sort of thing. He's done some great lectures on that, but he's also done, you know, things which I would say sort of encompasses around the location of where the organisation is in Birmingham. And one such investigation, which really caught my eye, and it was quite famous actually because it got all over the world, these pieces. And I'll know straight away when I talk about this piece of video footage of a woman that you know, seemingly disappeared in the bed, and through some type of assumed alien abduction type case. Dave talked to me about that in great length as well, which is absolutely fascinating. But there's a lot local goes on in places that you would never even dream of. I mean, we got all the, it's always Americans saying, oh, yes, this incident happened over there and this, state and that. But there's some crazy stuff that goes on in the flanks of Birmingham and its surrounding areas, which you wouldn't even dream of. And yet, when you get into the nuts and bolts of the investigations that Dave's done, you realise these are just as worthy and important as those other cases. You just don't get to hear about them very often.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I'd like to come back to that on that, Dave, actually. But, well, a couple of things, really. You touched on it a little bit there about you might wish to, or you might end up having an experience of your own. So, have you actually had any experiences? Have you seen UFO or anything like that? And also, going back onto what Steve said about loads of local sightings that don't necessarily make headlines. I mean, every time I put a little post out to people where I'm from, have you seen anything strange? I always get people coming back to me. It's surprising. Yeah. So, have you had an experience, and do you find that Birmingham is quite a bit of a hot spot, the Birmingham area, for UFO sightings?
I think that everywhere is probably a hotspot. I think
good answer. Yeah.
I think that my cases make it look like Birmingham is a massive hotspot for the subject, yeah. But if I lived in, say, Leicester, I'd make Leicester look like a UFO hotspot, yeah. I could easily, release many of the local cases that I've dealt with in this area, around the Birmingham area, to a newspaper and blow it out of all proportion, and they would be like, "Oh my God, Birmingham's like the biggest UFO hotspot the world's ever seen." Yeah, this is global. It's going on everywhere. Yeah, you're going to get it more in areas of high population. Obviously, Birmingham being one of the biggest cities in the country, there's a lot of people looking up. Yeah, so you're more likely to see things. So you get that pattern with it, where the areas of highest population are, of course. Yeah, but if you take that out of the picture, I think that this is going on everywhere, and you just have to be at the right place at the right time. So obviously, I'm actually mapping out the cases. I can go more into this in a bit, but I'm working on an interactive map at the moment. Excellent. And it's very interesting to see where the cases go, because I investigate worldwide. Yeah. So because it's global, and because we live in this age where we can just chat directly as we are right now, there's no need to go to a location directly to form a detailed investigation. Yeah. I can talk with the witnesses face to face. I can get them to send me photographs. I can look on Google Maps, Google Street View, and get the exact locale and what it looks like at ground level. Everything else that you would generally do in an investigation where you go to meet person directly, you can do remotely. So I investigate cases from everywhere, and as far wide as Australia. And the similarities between all those cases is truly fascinating to see. Back to your other question on the on the sighting. Had a UFO sighting in 2009 down in Warminster, Wiltshire, which is a known UFO hotspot. While we're talking about hotspots, it's a genuine hotspot. So since the late 70s to mid 80s, obviously there was the infamous Warminster thing. Many sightings and other strange anomalies that have gone on. It's in the 60th anniversary recently, and they actually had there's a Warminster mural, which is this massive art piece. You may have seen this in the news literally just the other week, that was repainted. I actually went to see it a couple of months ago. We actually went down to Warminster on a camping trip for the weekend.
So I remember you going, yeah.
It was great fun. And one of the things we did was go and check out the Warminster mural for just some nice group photos. So, and literally, we had no idea that within weeks going and checking that out, then completely go over it with a new art piece. So it's been completely redone. It looks really, really nice. I literally discovered that just the other day in the news. We had a great weekend down there. We actually ended up on the last morning, just before heading back to Birmingham, standing in one of the crop formations that had appeared back in May in the outskirts, within a mile of where we were staying, and we decided to head out there. You may know Alan Foster, UFO researcher. Steve definitely knows Alan well, and we headed out there. Now Alan was there back in the day. He was there with the big ones. All these major, massive formations have been in the news, and they're still going on even to this year. Yeah, I mean they're kind of kept out of the mainstream so much and not really talked about in the news anymore. But that was really great. I'm not saying that it was a genuine one or whatever. That's an argument in itself, which I could talk about for hours. Yeah, obviously there's certainly some big hoaxing groups hoaxing quite detailed crop formation. So I'm not saying whether it was real or not, but it was really cool going and actually checking it out and standing in it. And while we were out there, there was actually as a side note, there was a Cantonese TV crew making a podcast, and they interviewed me and Alan, so I've ended up on some random podcast.
Brilliant.
So it just happened to be down there at the time. So yeah, it was a good. So that was when my sighting took place in 2009. I actually took the group of us who were there for the camping trip. We went back to the spot where it happened, some place called Cradle Hill, just north of Warminster, and it's one of the infamous places. Back in the 70s, Arthur Shuttlewood, who was looking into the Warminster thing, would take groups of sky watchers up there, and it's lovely clear views. And I was down there for a UFO conference back in 2009. And they'd arranged a sky watch for the Saturday night up there, and myself and about 20 others saw an unidentified flying object. I mean, it wasn't anything dramatic. It wasn't a big disc covered in lights or shooting beams down or anything like that. It was an object of undefinable shape that was about the size of a light aircraft, I'd say. It had lights on it that didn't match any known civilian or military aircraft. It was completely silent, even though it was no more than a few 100 feet above our heads, moving quite fast. So whatever it was unusual and had odd characteristics, and nobody's been able to identify it to this day. So that's the only time I've ever had a genuine UFO sighting, and I don't count it as dramatic, but it was quite cool to actually finally see something. Yeah. And I actually had that sighting literally 2 months after being made the chairman of Birmingham UFO Group.
No, that's strange.
Synchronicity again. Synchronicity.
Yeah. How bizarre is that? Yeah.
It is. I think I like the fact, it is what it is. And like you say, you can only describe what you saw. But, when I hear people describe UFO sightings, to me, sightings such as yours, immediately in my mind, I'm thinking credible. It's credible because you're not offering, you're not offering, oh, it was like this and it was flashing like you've just said, there was no beams of light. I mean, I've seen a couple of UFOs and they've both been exactly the same as what you've just described. It's a light in the sky, which is clearly moving and coming back on itself, then disappearing. Nothing dramatic. And at the time, I didn't even think much of it. I knew what I'd seen, but you'd imagine you'd be like, oh, I can't believe but it was nothing like that. It was a bit strange. Stephen, what are your thoughts? Because you've captured plenty of footage of UFOs. I mean, it is strange how you react in the moment, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it just seems to be that some people just cannot stop seeing the damn things. It's just, and it's, I mean, I wish people were just always like me, because then everybody would be saying, they're everywhere. But I look in the newspapers and I hear nothing sometimes, and I look at these things thinking half the bloody county should have seen this stuff. So, but that's just so how profound this is. But I know with Dave mentioning about Cradle Hill, interestingly, it was my very first skywatch. My mother and father took me up there when I was 5, and all I recount is sitting on some type of bedspread on the ground on the top of this grassy hill in the middle of the night, and there was all sorts of weird people there. Some people with headphones on and aerial things and all in their hands, and it was crazy, wacky days then. And my mum and dad were a bit like hippie-ish, So that was my first skywatch on Cradle. I didn't even know until I was about 15 or something where the hell I was, until I kind of had a chat with my dad, and he told me, and I thought, oh, that's interesting. It's a hotspot. He said, oh, yeah. And that's why we went. And went, oh, right, okay. But yeah, I mean, sightings are plentiful. So many now on a global scale. We really do have to question, where the hell are they all coming from, to be honest with you? That's probably one of the biggest, strangest things of all.
Well, that leads me nicely into actually, Dave. I mean, I'd like both your opinions, but Dave, let's start with you on this, and it's a loaded question, so I don't expect you to give me an answer really. But I mean, what are your thoughts at this point in your research? Where are these things coming from? Are we talking about aliens? Are we talking about interdimensional? Yeah, maybe a bit of all of those things. I mean, what's your research?
So it's a very, very complex subject, the origins of these things, and any one claim about where these things are coming from, you'll have a bunch of cases that will back up that particular origin, but you'll have other ones that completely dismiss it and state something completely different. Now, obviously, a lot of the time when I say I believe in this stuff, oh, you believe in aliens then, from off-world, as in extraterrestrials, definitely extraterrestrial, and I'll usually go back and I'll say no. What I believe is that there are numerous different types of advanced non-human beings, intelligences, species, call them what you like, that are interacting with us on a regular basis. I think, given the different possibilities, and I think the most likely explanation is that they are from outside. Yeah. Now, whether they're traveling backwards and forwards right now, we just can't see them, or whether they've been here for like thousands of years and they're kind of like living alongside us. I think it's very likely that they're from elsewhere. But there's also a lot of evidence pointing towards the extra dimensional aspect that are seen in the cases again and again, like the way that their craft and the beings themselves can vanish or appear either from thin air, or sometimes they might see some sort of portal that they actually enter into. They can step into a person's bedroom through a solid wall. They can take the person back through that into light. These are aspects that are talked about time and time again, and it all points towards them going into another reality and sort of shifting and having the ability to shift in and out of that reality. I've dealt with some cases where the beings themselves have been sort of semi-translucent, almost like ghosts, like they're not sort of fully present or solid. But then there's lots of cases where they are truly solid and have you've got crash cases where dead ones and even live ones have been recovered. So they seem quite fallible, and it's possible that they have the ability to kind of shift between a physical and less physical, metaphysical form. So there's all sorts of complexities. You've got cases on record where they may have come from our future, or there's hints that they've come back from the future and are being sent back from future humans to collect samples or save the planet, or whatever their agendas are. So there's all these different potentials to the origin. I think the important thing to realize isn't necessarily to have all the answers to that, because as we say, it could be multiple things going on at once. It's a very, very complex subject. I think the important thing is to realize that it's real, that these beings exist, and are very, very. It's very, very unlikely they're some sort of human-made secret project. I do not believe that somewhere one of our military or governments is making these things in a lab and sending them out all around the world. It makes no logical sense, and there's not been much evidence backing that up. The evidence that I have seen supporting things like that is usually very conspiratorial stuff that's online that doesn't really have any kind of hard science behind it, or anybody truly of any credentials backing it up. There's all sorts of rumors.
Yeah. Can I ask you one more quick question? I mean, what's your inkling, before I get Steve's thoughts on this? What's your inkling? I mean, do you think we're dealing with one non-human intelligence, or do you think we're dealing with many? Because you can make an argument for either or on this one.
I think we're definitely dealing with multiple intelligences. There's certainly, with the contact phenomena that I've looked into in great depth, there's certainly different types that look quite individual to one another and appear to be interacting with one another, as in working towards common agendas. So a lot of the time, a person will have an experience where multiple different types that look quite different are seemingly working together, friendly with one another. It's very hard to kind of simplify that, though, really, and so some people simplify it and think that some of these types are kind of good and certain types are bad. Right? That's like saying that the human race is good or bad.
Exactly.
If everything that we've got with the detail of our species and what we're capable of doing, and also what we're capable of building, would just as likely apply to another species, especially if it was an advanced species, more advanced than us, it might apply even more. So some people will argue, okay, if these things are real, how come there's like thousands of different types of craft seen that these things are flying around in? Well, haven't we got many, many different types of aerial and land vehicles and sea vehicles ourselves? All sorts of different types and shapes are sometimes being built for different purposes, and it's entirely possible that we've got the same thing going on like that. But it's hard. There's not much evidence linking a particular shape to a particular task. Like, I can't tell you, for example, that in 100% of abduction cases, and I know not everybody likes the word abduction, but people know what I mean when I say that, that it's always from the same craft type. That doesn't exist. You can see patterns, but you'll always find cases that go against those patterns.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, we spoke about what these things could be on multiple occasions. I mean, so, you know.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think when it comes to this subject, I think the deliverance of this subject through the phenomena's eyes is absurdity and confusion. And I think that's exactly how it operates. I think we can gather now, after all this time, that these intelligences don't want to land on the White House lawn, don't want to go about it. They want to be quite clandestine and skullduggery stuff going on. That seems to be their thing. So us praising to try and get that type of stuff from the phenomenon, it's never demonstrated that, to be honest with you. There are some very profound ones. You're driving along and suddenly there's this a craft in the middle of the road, but they're just so out there. Most people hear it and would say, yeah, you must have lost his mind, because that's how it delivers sometimes. And they do some really crazy, wacky things sometimes. And you think to yourself, something's a bit out here, something's a bit odd. I mean, you can't take it away from these incidents that they are actually do happen, where some strange, profound technological craft comes down to the ground and it's got round 1930s round portholes with rivets around it. And you think to yourself, something's a bit amiss here. But then you go away and you talk about that and people just think, yeah, you're nuts. Seemingly there's an absurdity part being applied to a lot of these things, where it just leaves the humans and those experiences just in a bit of a crazed state, sometimes purposely leaving out real critical information because people got to just think, I can't say that because they'll think I've absolutely lost it. But the truth of the matter is, I think it's important, and as like Jacques Vallée said, the story's the story. And whatever happened, no matter how profound it is, needs to be told, because we've got to kind of get some kind of understanding about how they operate and why they do what they do. And maybe, as Jacques Vallée said, he's some type of psychological warfare in a sense. In other words, let's confuse the human, so they can't work it out and put the dots together. And I think that seems to be the case, because I cannot imagine any scenario ever taking place now. We've known this phenomenon for a long time, where they're going to just come and land on the White House lawn and say, "Hey guys, we're here."
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like that. I mean, like you say, I know we'll probably touch on disclosure for whatever that means in a little while. Dave, you mentioned alien abductions there.
Yeah.
I'd like to get your thoughts on this, because like yourself, I've studied a lot of these. There's certain things I've noticed, such as like the presence of stone. But what I'm going to get to is, it doesn't always seem like these people are actually on board a spacecraft or a vehicle of any kind. They, first of all, they don't recall actually entering the vehicle. They recall approaching it, but then all of a sudden they're inside a room.
Yep.
This room normally has no source lighting. They can't pinpoint where the actual light's coming from. It's like the walls are just glowing. It's everywhere. And a lot of them speak about stone tables, stone seats, rock all around them. So I suppose that begs the question, either they're being taken to another dimension, another planet, which would be unlikely, even given that there could be stuff we don't understand scientifically. It almost seems like they're being taken somewhere on Earth. And I know there's numerous conspiracies, if you like, of bases in mountains, bases under the water. What are your thoughts on that? Has your research shown that to you? And
in some of the cases, you could interpret it as somewhere that's in a base, and it would make somewhat amount of sense. A lot of researchers believe that they've probably got bases on the planet somewhere here, where they could take people back to, or just hide away from humankind. And that's entirely possible, right? Either deep underground or deep sea, or wherever, both. Yeah. Now, whether that's the case or not with this, I don't know. I mean, so in some cases, everything you're describing there with the bench and and the smooth walls, well, sometimes there's a window, and when they look out the window, they'll either be in the atmosphere, like they'll see clouds outside, sometimes daylight, sometimes after dark, might see stars. They might be out in space, so they realise they've been taken up out of the atmosphere and are now in space somewhere. Usually don't know how far away from the Earth. There's been some cases where they have looked out and have seen the Earth down below, so they're close by it, but not clear, not within the atmosphere. So that implies that you might be getting more than one thing going on with here. So if it was all in bases, then how would you explain the window thing, unless the window thing is some sort of holographic display to make it look like they're out in space? Then you'd have to ask, why would they do that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
but maybe that's trying to humanize something that isn't human. Maybe they got their reasons, and the same would apply to the origins. We were talking about the origins earlier on. I've dealt with some cases where people have been shown star maps very similar to the infamous Betty and Barney Hill abduction case. I've dealt with some other cases very similar to that, where people have been shown maps of dots on the screen or whatever, and they've been told this is the star system we come from. But how do we know that the beings aren't lying themselves? How do we know that the beings themselves aren't telling the individual that they're from outer space to cover up what they actually are?
Yeah, that's actually, I
Just
think,
speak
one of the
about this a
biggest
lot, Steve.
problems, isn't it?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I mean, if we can go through, I wish somebody had actually compile a book on this, because I tell you what, it was so obvious by the time we'd read it, that if you go back through time and look at the research, look at the documents, look what people have said about communications with having encounters with these things, is that there are hundreds and hundreds of different places they're claiming to come from. Hundreds and hundreds of various different strange names they have, and even variations such as, well, we're aliens from a planet, we're advanced aliens, or we're interdimensional beings, or we're from another paranormal reality, and the list goes on and on and on, to the point where when you conclude all this and look at it, you kind of go, what the hell? You know, surely just by statistics alone, you'd say something's not right here. You know, there's all these phantom stuff, and you know, and science. We have to follow science, and science will say, the scientists are saying, you know, we know that there are other planets out there like Earth. There's got to be exoplanets, but just the slightest variation in gravity or temperature, anything, you know, slightest changes in that environment would mean quite large variations in life forms. The problem that we tend to have is that they're all seemingly bipedal, 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, go about the same business in various different crafts and doing the same type of agendas. You would expect that some difference. I mean, we've only got to go, and I've said this before, I've got bottom of the North Sea to see something truly alien, and that's only you know, an environmental change even on our planet. So that's what's confusing. And science will say, oh yes, this is what to expect life forms to be like, and yet that's scientifically that we don't seem to be get that from intelligent life forms. It seems to be a blueprint of a bipedal, which is seemingly, I don't know if that's just something that throughout the universe and that's a blueprint, that's what it is. Because you'd expect, well, surely there must be other intelligent life that don't follow the blueprint, which you would expect, because, you know, it's always, science would even argue the point, well, humans would be better if we had the extra 2 arms, or if we had extra this or extra that or whatever, but we're not. You know, so you think environmental changes might bring that, but it doesn't seem to. So, yeah, I mean, Dave's right, absolutely right. I mean, who knows? There are so many things. What is interesting is that it's a glorious, colourful book of all the information that people have been given through, from meeting these things and giving them mince pies at Christmas, you know, and offering wheat cakes and, you know, to the profound, absolutely profound or even shocking experiences. So you kind of, again, I think Dave's mentioned this before. There's this trickster element involved, and maybe who knows if anybody's actually really getting the truth or not. We just don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, like you say. I mean, well, again, that leads me nicely. I don't know, Dave, if you found this in your research, but it's certainly something me and Steve bang on about quite a lot. Is that there's so many similarities between UFOs, alien abductions, Bigfoot cases, ghosts, poltergeists, etc., etc. Have you found that in your research, and do you believe there is some kind of connection? You know, for example, in alien abduction cases, a lot of people, before they realise they've actually been abducted, they'll hear strange noises, electrical equipment will go wrong, they'll even see shadow people, maybe even hooded figures. And these are all things you would associate with ghosts and things, but they're coming up in alien abduction. So, what are your
yeah.
thoughts on that, Dave?
Yeah, I think there's a definite crossover there. Now, exactly the reason for that crossover is one of the things that keeps me fascinated. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you've got the crossover with psychic phenomena as well. So a large proportion, way too high proportion of people who experience contact have innate, seemingly innate psychic type abilities. Like we'll have premonitions of future events and that sort of thing. And again, there's that direct link. And some researchers have tried to separate this all out into separate things that are walled off, and it's just not what the reality is when you talk with people. When I did a count a number of years ago, definitely needs a recount, which is something I'm working on at the moment with the database. But back when I did the count, 85% of the contact cases that I dealt with had also talked about having paranormal type activity in their vicinity, usually around their own home. because obviously that's where they're spending a lot of their time. They would see kind of glowing orbs floating across the room, quite common. A lot of people associate that with paranormal, not aliens at all. Poltergeist activity, as you mentioned, moving objects, electrical faults, that sort of thing, and it happens far too regularly. The interesting thing is why is it the same phenomena manifesting in different ways, which some people believe, this idea of this trickster that manifests in loads of different ways, or is it that the person is more susceptible to seeing paranormal because they're having contact? So contact has enhance their brain in a certain way, enhance their sixth sense abilities. And because of that, because these beings talk telepathically with people, and that's been seen again and again and again. There's a very small number of cases where they talk audibly. Most of the time they talk using their mind. So maybe making that connection with the person has in some way, maybe as a side effect, not even intentional.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to just jump in quickly on that, because like you say, do you think that is something to do with the human mind then? Because like you're right. I mean, my research, and I'm sure Steve's is the same, is that once you've had these encounters, not all the time, but 9 times out of 10, you will experience premonitions, telepathy, even the ability to affect lighting or electrical appliances. So do you think it's almost awakening something in the human mind by having these experiences?
Yeah, I mean, the beings have never, as far as I'm aware, at least in the cases I've dealt with, the beings have never said that directly to anybody. Yeah. It might be unintentional. It could be some kind of gift, like they're giving it to the person on purpose. But then you could flip it on its head, right? And you could say that the beings are interested in the person because they've got those abilities from birth naturally, and that's why they're special. That's why they're being taken, and the next person isn't. So a lot of people I speak with, they ask that. They're like, "Why me?" They're like, "Why not? Why is this happening to me? I'm just a regular guy. I'm a regular dude being taken by these beings. Yeah, why is that happening in my life?" And I can't really answer that for them, but that's a possibility. So if they've had these abilities before, so in a lot of cases I've dealt with, the individual has had paranormal or psychic type experiences before they've started experiencing contact, at least to their knowledge. But that's got a problem. Everything has a problem with this subject because of missing time. So they may well have had earlier contact experiences that have been entirely blocked out their mind. And it might be that they only remember from like teenage years or even as full adult years having contact, but they remember these other weird experiences from earlier in their life. Which first, it's the chicken and the egg thing.
It is. That's the problem, because we just don't know. I mean, all we can put is the data, look at the data and say, okay, all right, we'll try and figure something out. There are little theories that pop up from time to time. Originally, it was like, well, you know what, you people have missing time because you may have had a traumatic type experience, and we don't want to leave you with that. So we don't want to cause any problematics in psychological processing as you move on, trying to understand these experiences. So therefore, they removed the memory. But then, you talk about time associated with missing time. I mean, sometimes there are things that you would have to absolutely have to consider operating outside space and time. I mean, I had a courier, a motorcycle courier. It travelled all the way down to Southport to deliver a parcel, which he did in the middle of the night. He has a tachometer on his motorcycle. So he's coming back. He tells his wife, don't stay up because I'm not going to be home till about 4. He knows how long these trips take. And he delivers the parcel. The sign off is there at the time he signed off on the parcel. He's riding back and he decides, I'm not going to go on the motorway. I'm going to go take a few of the country roads and stuff. Sees a strange light in the sky, which seemingly came quite close to him on his bike. Next thing in a minute, he's up on top of his driving onto his drive. The light's still on. He's understand, why is the light still on? His wife's still up. It's not 4 o'clock in the morning. It's 1:15 in the morning. But the tachometer on the bike says he did the journey, but the motorcycle couldn't have done it. He couldn't have exceeded. He couldn't have got the speed out of his motorcycle to take that time off to have done the trip in such a less amount of time. And this is, again, it's just like, what the hell has happened here? It's like a whole thing about space and time is twisted about this event as well. So we do struggle. We all researchers do, because we have to struggle, like Dave and myself and yourself, everybody, because we only can apply what we learn in this reality of the box that we live in. But when the phenomena can clearly operate outside the box of physics and understanding that we understand, we only got the things inside the box to try and make sense of it. And like I say, you can't do that sometimes.
Yeah, I'm literally working on an incredible missing time case at the moment, which I can tell you about right now if you want.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
Please do.
You'll be fascinated by this. This is very, very good. I can't reveal the names of the people involved or even some of the. I'm not going to mention full locations because they want the anonymity, which is a good thing in itself straight away because it shows they're not in it for any kind of fame or fortune. I was literally speaking with the gentleman earlier on the phone about this. It's incredible. Really, really, really fascinating. The incident happened Halloween last year, Halloween 2024. This man, his partner, his wife, and two friends had gone out to a place called the White Hart, which is in St Albans, basically bar and restaurant in St Albans. And supposedly the bar's actually haunted, which is probably a good reason for going there on Halloween night, right? Sort of ghost investigations and things go on there. Anyway, they stayed there for the meal, and then they went off to another place called the Snug, a nearby bar, and stayed at the Snug for just a single drink. I don't think alcohol has anything to do with any of this. They then walked back to where the car was parked up and headed off. Now the gentleman was pretty certain that it was about 9:30 at night when this happened, and they live north of Redbourne, so they would follow the same route back from St Albans home every single time. Yeah, so they knew the route really, really well, which roads they'd be going down, and they're driving along the Redbourne Road, the A5183. And the first odd thing that was numerous odd things happened in a row. And the first one, they're driving past this shell garage on the left, and at that exact moment, the man he thinks he sees something out the corner of his eye off to the right, a light. He doesn't know whether it's kind of down lower up in the sky. Yeah, it was just kind of there was something there. But his wife then mentions the blue glow coming from the electrical chargers at the garage. Yeah, and he turns around to the left to look at them. Because they used to own an electric car in the past, yeah. And then when he looks back, there's no sign of any light, so he doesn't look off to the right or anything. It's not there anymore, whatever it was, yeah. Short distance on, they get to a roundabout. So I've trapped all this on. We know exactly where things happened with this. Get to the roundabout, turn right, and he says as soon as they come off the roundabout, he felt this very strange, odd sensation. He said it felt like he'd snapped his head round to the left and then back to the right, really, really quick, like a kind of odd sort of slightly faint sort of thing, just for a moment. But he doesn't think too much of it. He doesn't mention it to his wife or anything. And they keep driving up this road. About halfway along this next stretch of road, there's this side turning off to the left. As they go past that, the car's no longer where it should be. The car's no longer on that road. It's instantly somewhere else. So all of a sudden they find themselves driving on a much narrower road. There's a privet hedge and things, a laurel hedge, and some other areas of grass and things around him. And he realizes he doesn't know where he is yet. And he says that to his wife. And car's still driving the same speed they were driving a moment before, about 45 miles an hour. It's quite dark. There's very little sort of street lighting around. He's going down this track and going down this much smaller road, doesn't know where he is, quite confusing. Yeah. All of a sudden sees some car headlights in the distance, and they start moving up towards him. He said they felt very, very bright, probably had high beams on, not expecting to sort of see anybody else there on the road or whatever. Anyway, he said they were going so fast he just about managed to kind of move the car off to the left and go, and it was very, very close, like when you just go straight past something, it makes you cringe. And then the car's still driving. He reaches a T-junction in the road, but the car's still going way too fast because he doesn't know where he is yet. So he just follows the curve round to the left and finds himself on this other road. Still doesn't know where he is, still confused about where they are. This new road they're on is a bit wider, keeps on driving forwards and everything. And then he sees a sign for a particular industrial estate, which he doesn't recognize the name of. After that, reaches a roundabout, and it's on this roundabout, there's a sign for Redbourne, and his wife points at the sign, says, immediately he's like, I know where I am, yeah, because they've been to that roundabout before. They just weren't expecting to be there. Then it's after dark and everything, yeah. So all of a sudden, he works out where they are, and where they were is about 1.5 miles east of where they'd been when the car, so this car had shifted, seemingly shifted instantaneously, 1.5 miles to the east. This is fascinating, right? Now,
Yeah.
it's both him and his wife, remember, so you can't say it was kind of automatic driving. So highway hypnosis, yeah. So the problem, there's two problems with that. First of all, highway hypnosis, you will automatically follow a route that you know because you're doing it without thinking. You won't automatically drive down other roads that you don't know and make random turns, yeah. And so then you say, okay, so he's had some sort of fainting fit and he's zoned out a few minutes or whatever, and he's driven it himself. But surely his wife next to him would have noticed that and been like, where are you going? Yeah. And to her, she also instantly transferred to this other road, yeah. So they're really confused about what's gone on here. They're at the island, and usually he said that they would usually go left towards Redbourne, but instead, for some reason, his wife suggests going straight on. Now, this was an alternative route, and he said it was about 6 minutes longer to get back home that way. But she suggests it, and then he goes along with it. And he said that in itself was odd because he said that usually they go left. Now, left would have taken him back towards where the car had been before it moved. And he wonders whether him and his wife were like, stay away from that area or whatever. So they keeps going on and they get back home. And after they get back home, he checks the clock and of course, missing time. So he was very sure that because they'd done this journey plenty of times before. So the journey time's 21 minutes without traffic problems. He said you add on 6 minutes for the alternative route. They took us 27 minutes, right? There was 25 minutes he couldn't account for. It was now 10:22 p.m. 25 minutes that he has no idea. Now, the reason he reached out to me is because he's looking to be hypnotized. He wants to go for a hypnotic regression because it's been weighing on his mind ever since it happened. And he's genuinely perplexed by it. And I've been talking with him on video call and other conversations. Absolutely no doubt whatsoever that this happened exactly as he's reporting. And I know this because earlier on he was driving around the roads trying to locate the point where the car had come back. Yeah. But he couldn't find. This is a weird thing. He has recollections of turning left and of seeing a narrow road with woodland and this sort of thing. But when he's driving down the roads that it must have been, he says it doesn't look right. Now, I don't know whether he's just getting confused or whether there's some kind of screen memory thing going on there with that or what, whether it's still part of the experience. He knows where he definitely is when he got onto the road and saw that sign for the industrials. And that's when we've pinpointed it on Google Maps so we can find it. Yeah. So we know where that is. And we know from his memory of the way he turned the car where he should have been. But when he goes back and checks out the roads, which is hyper frustrating to him because he's trying to find the exact spot where it happened. He said he's tried to find it numerous times. But as part of the investigation, he said, do you want me to go out there this afternoon? I said, great, yeah. So he contacted me and he said, I can't find it. It doesn't make any sense. But I mean, what does make sense with that is all sorts of interesting anomalies with that, and that could all be related to the experience in various ways. Absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it is really interesting. 25 minutes.
It really
is. With other cases, almost exactly the same as that. I've dealt with other cases.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it reminds me of the Mann family case, I think from 74, 78. There was another one around about the same time. And what I found interesting, you were talking about, he had hedges at the side. They said exactly the same thing. They didn't know where they were. There was high hedges and bushes. There's a case from South Africa, I believe in the 70s. Similar thing, although it was much longer. They went for miles and miles, but they said they traveled down a road they didn't know. There's a case from Moscow, I think 89, similar thing, down a lonely highway, and then you come out in industrial ground. So what I'm leading to here. Do you think these people are going down roads that simply because, like you say, they try to find them and they can't locate them? So it's almost as if the car's been taken away.
Yeah.
Some kind of screen, artificial scenery around them. I know that sounds absolutely preposterous and science fiction style, but I mean, that's what it kind of leans itself to. And what are your thoughts? I mean, Dave and then Steve, I'm getting both.
With this one, it's particularly fascinating because he's literally going back out there and he literally remembers making certain turns.
Yeah.
We literally, and he knows that he didn't drive for sort of half an hour before he reached the roundabout, which we know the definite location of. And also, this only happened a year ago, so you can't say, oh, they've gone and totally changed the scenery or demolished a big area or whatever, because it would be obvious that they'd done that if they'd rebuilt a new road or something in its place. And that hasn't happened. It doesn't make any logical sense. I mean, I've dealt with cases where you've got screen memory elements, abduction cases, so the person will see their own home, feel like they're at in their own home, or maybe their own hospital or something like that they recognize, but it's just off.
Yeah.
Actually, sometimes it's not even off. Sometimes, like, the only reason they know that it couldn't have been a hospital is because they know that they've never been to hospital at all. And yet, and except that their memories is that they've been to hospital, but they know that they've never injured themselves and willingly gone to hospital. So sometimes it can be absolutely accurate, to an actual place, and other times there can be slightly disjointed things, like things are out of place or the wrong size in the wrong position or whatever. It's just really fascinating. Whether that happened with here or whether he's just confused about the exact side road he was down, we don't know at present. It's possible if he goes through the regression, he might be able to kind of remember more details of where he was, and we can pinpoint it that way. I mean, whatever it was, whichever road it happened on, it happened around that area. We know that it's like 1.5 miles away from where he was a split second before with the cast information. So that's the real unexplainable thing.
It really is interesting because, you have to sort of conceive some of these ideas that people have these experiences that are they snatched out of our reality? Or is reality altered in some cases? Because, we can go back. I mean, Dave will remember this as well as I do, back to the days of Jenny Randall's Oz Factor experiences when they were reported that people would have these close encounter or missing time experiences. But, they're on a road, they're on a main road where normally there's cars, there's people around, and there's nothing. It's like, where is everybody gone?
Yeah.
And it's like, it is reality, but it's different. It's something unusual. We don't know if this is all happening in here, of course, as opposed to something external. But they've also got to consider the fact, well, maybe there are there's multiple realities. And might you just drop and take and put in this one where the reality is a bit different, or it can be manipulated or more governed by the phenomena. It is so, again, absurdity, profound, trying to wrap our heads around the understanding of how this operates within what we understand is just so strange.
And then you've got, and then if they're taking the car, let's say that, so that would imply that they're taking the car, and we know that there's cases on record like the infamous A71 incident, where they've seen the car being lifted up into the ground with them in, and there's no reason to suspect that these advanced beings wouldn't be capable of doing something like that, and then they drop down the car, but why would the car still be in motion? But here's the thing, that fits in with what you just said a second ago, Steve, about this change in reality. Like, they go through, and then when they come back, they're still driving just like nothing's happened. But now they're in a different position.
It's either that, or they're occupied by the phenomena, and it's a phenomenon that's driving you down the road, and then you just vacate, and you're kind of, what?
It's interesting stuff. I mean, the thing is with the lonely road thing, though, I mean, most people think about alien abductions and you think you're taken from your bed. But if you look at, and you'll know this, Dave, and you'll know this, Steve, too, there's multiple cases of people being abducted on roads. I mean, it's probably one of the most likely places you can actually get abducted, if you like, and so that makes me think, is this opportunistic entities that just think, okay, we can target that, we can zero in on this one because they're on their own, or are we talking about portals, gateways that are in these desolate places that just allow these interactions to take place? I mean, it just has another layer of nuance to everything, really.
I mean, I think a large proportion of the cases I deal with, at least, are repeat cases, so the individual have multiple experiences.
Right.
Now, the only other experience that the key witness that I've spoke with so far has had, he did say he'd had a previous UFO sighting, which we've yet to go over. Doesn't appear in any way linked with what happened here. As I say, he didn't see a UFO. There was no UFO seen in this incident, but the pieces very much fit other cases I've dealt with which have involved beings or have involved craft being seen. So just because he didn't see a craft directly doesn't mean it's not related. But other people could interpret it different, right? Somebody could say, "Oh, that's evidence of teleportation,"
Yeah.
or the car got teleported. And the other thing, the other anomalies are just, I don't know, small medical issues or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah, it does get complicated because I think the more you study this, it's like something about reality is in there with
Oh,
this.
yeah.
I mean, it
Oh,
was
yeah.
only last week I was talking to a gentleman from Brazil, and he had an incident took place not too long ago when he was driving down a road going home, and it was a pretty abandoned road, really. He normally takes it home from work, but something strange happened. He saw a naked gentleman walking along, but he didn't look right. It was something weird about it. And he couldn't really put his finger on it, but it scared the hell out of him. So the following night, he's coming home from work and he thinks, "Oh, I wonder if it's going through his mind, and I don't know if I want to go down this way, and what's the chances of me seeing something like that?" Again, something really, really weird happens. So on the third night, he says, "There's no way I am driving down that bloody road." And he goes out of his way. Every single road was closed. Every time he tried to deter, he had to sort of it was like, it was whole fashion that he had to go down this road. And it was on that third occasion he had missing time. So it was just like, there's been oh yes, it will be fashioned and it's going to happen. There's no way out of it. You're going to get it one way or the other. And it took 3 nights to do it. But afterwards, it was like, oh, that kind of all ended and didn't have that experience again. And going down that road was okay. It's like reality is something weird is going on. It's so
yeah, yeah.
strange.
And these are the things that are undeniable. I suppose you only get it from actually delving into lots of cases like you and me do, Steve. If you
Yeah.
don't do that, if you're coming at it from the outside, it's very easy to dismiss. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or it's a lot of people obviously have very sort of dismissive, overarching, skeptical viewpoints on certain things. Like they might put cold contact down to sleep paralysis, right?
Yeah.
Now, sleep paralysis, it exists. I've dealt with contact cases where the individual has had sleep paralysis experiences
Yeah.
and contact experiences and can tell the difference between them.
Mm.
There are many cases where the person's had sleep paralysis and it might misinterpret it as a contact experience because there is quite a bit of crossover. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can't dismiss the whole contact phenomena as sleep paralysis because of said vehicle cases that we're currently talking about. People don't get sleep. If people got sleep paralysis behind the wheel, it would
That's
be,
not going to go well.
disaster. Yeah, it would be an absolute disaster. I know if people fall asleep behind the wheel, when they drift off. I don't think I've ever read about a sleep paralysis case behind the wheel ever.
No.
No, I don't think. I think you're
No.
right there. Dave, can I ask you? You mentioned about alien abductions, but you mentioned repeat abductees, and obviously you've
Yes.
looked a lot of that. You've researched a lot of those things. And again, this is something that fascinates me, looking at alien abductions, repeat abductees, and going back through all the timeline. A lot of the times comes in retrospect, after they've been abducted several times. It sounds crazy and outlandish, but there's a lot of researchers, and I'm not sure if I buy into this or not, but there's a lot of researchers who suggest that these repeat abductees are part of some kind of hybridization program. Now, whether that's just to, propel humans to another level, or whether they're trying to, take over the planet through the back door by creating hybrids. What are your thoughts on that? Is that just absolute nonsense, or is there something in this? And what do you think?
So the hybrid program, I certainly believe, is a very, very real agenda going on with it.
Okay.
But I don't whether the actual people who are involved in that are being hybridized themselves in any way. I don't know. If they are, it's taking place very, very slowly over long, long periods of time. Because otherwise, you could just get them in a lab and just scientists could be like, "This person's not fully human."
Well, just to put another thing in there, I think it was Dr. David Jacobs who suggested, and I think John Mack hinted at this as well, or not as openly, that no, you're right, they're not actually being hybridized themselves. They're almost being used to teach hybrids how to act, because they can look like us and everything like that, but they can't act like us. Mundane things like going shopping, what to say in conversations, and it sounds bizarre. I mean, I read this study by David Jacobs, and I was thinking, oh, hell. But it actually made a certain amount of sense. And have you come across anything like that in your research, Dave?
I've dealt with quite a few cases involving hybrid babies. So more often than not, female abductees, but sometimes male as well. And they'll make these half alien, half human things. Usually look like greys, half grey, half human. Why? There's no definite rules on that, but they just seem to and a lot of the time they might look almost entirely human, but be slightly off. And other times they'll be sort of 50-50 and have black eyes and that sort of thing. But the interesting thing is that the individual, when they're handed these babies, there's this like emotional connection, and they view it as their own son or daughter, even though it doesn't look right. And there's that parental child relationship there, and it's very, very difficult for people. It can be pretty traumatic. I've sat in on cases where the individuals relive this, sometimes under aggression, sometimes they remember it consciously, and it's horrendous, and it really emotionally draining for them, because they view it like it's their own son or daughter that's been taken away from them. There's even cases where the baby itself has had a screen memory overlaid over it, so they don't even see it like a baby. There's an incredible case where this involved a gentleman from up north England. It looked like an orange triangle, right? It looked like an orange triangle with two light blue eyes for like dots for eyes, yeah. And he viewed this weird lump as his son, and he was holding it and cradling it like a baby. But to his conscious recollection, it looked like a strange orange triangle. I mean, just bizarre.
It really is.
So you've got like a screen memory going on overlaid over this hybrid baby. Maybe for whatever reason they didn't want him to see what it actually looked like. A lot of the time, though, that screen memory isn't there. They'll remember being. Strangely, sometimes when the being brings them the baby, they don't remember the being. I don't know whether it's because the baby takes priority or whatever in their mind, but I've noticed numerous times that when that happens, and I ask them what the being looked like, they can't remember. They just remember a being of some kind bringing them this baby that didn't look fully human and handing it to them, and then they hold it a while, and then it takes them back, and then often it'll take it back without saying why. Sometimes it might tell people things like it can't exist on Earth and it has to remain here with us. I've had that mentioned numerous times. But exactly what they're doing with these things, I mean, obviously some researchers take a very negative view of it and believe that we are going to be replaced by them at some point. But this has been going on for decades, There's no sign of that. I've not got any warnings off any of the experiences I've spoken with who are like allude to like, oh, I know what's coming, and in 2030 we're going to get taken over by them, or anything like that. There might be cases like that on record that I'm unaware of, but in terms of the cases I've investigated and looked in the hundreds, that's never happened as a thing. It's usually very cryptic. They usually won't tell them much at all about exactly what they're making it for. But yeah, it's certainly a very real part of certain contact experiences. Some researchers believe it's in all contact experiences, and it's like the memories are blocked out a lot of the time entirely. So it might be more common, but I've seen it in enough cases to view it as a real part of the contact phenomena, and it's not only traumatic, but it's also the hardest thing to grasp, and it's the hardest thing that skeptics to grasp, because it sounds like sci-fi, doesn't it?
It does.
It sounds like the sort of thing you'd see in a film.
It really does. I mean, there's plenty of cases on record, isn't there? Like you say about, not just where people have been given babies either. I mean, I've actually spoke to a woman a few years ago that she was just seeing UFOs. I can mention this because I'm not going to mention her name. And she suffered an ectopic pregnancy. And, obviously I'm not going to sit there and say, oh, well, maybe. But she herself eventually, after so many months, said something just doesn't feel right about what happened. And she didn't say it, but I knew what she was hinting at. And I didn't say it. But there's plenty of cases on record of people who have been pregnant, and then all of a sudden there's no baby there. They've not miscarried. It's just gone. Linda Jones, Steve, I believe you did.
I did the investigation.
She didn't even know she was pregnant, and she was told, you've been pregnant and you've lost a baby. And what?
There was evidence of that, yeah.
So there is something going on here. Now, some people will say it's hybridization to take over. Others will say they're trying to save their race. It's probably neither of those. It's probably something we've not even considered. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there could be another possibility is they are maybe seeding life elsewhere in other places.
I think
that's a good point.
But again, I don't know what evidence there is on record to support that. As I say, most of the cases that I've dealt with involving hybrids, it seems to be quite cryptic, and they don't really tell them much in depth about exactly why they've made it or what it's to be used for. It's just it's such a fascinating, and it's also very negative because of the trauma that's involved in that. It's a very negative side to the contact phenomena. You know, this stuff is no laughing matter. It breaks people's lives apart, and there's a lot of people view it like a bit of a joke, and it's a shame, you know, because when you delve into it and you see the emotional trauma this is causing people, and you also realize that there's no way that they're making this stuff up. Like, why would they? It's not just a story. I'm not saying that every single case, you know, there probably is stories where people have read online about hybrids and then made up some tall tale about it happening to them. But a lot of the time, it doesn't really happen that often. Like, most of the people I speak with, I believe, are talking about real experiences, or at least real to them.
It's like you said, isn't it? A lot of those people, and I know, again, we're not going to name names and see if I get your thoughts on this, because we've spoke about this before, where there's people who, you know, will say, well, I've been in contact with this and I know what's coming and blah, 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 and I'm half alien. And they're the people who are seeking out almost a platform to voice these things. Whereas people who have found these experiences really traumatic, they're completely the opposite. Like you say, people don't want to give their, you know, I'm speaking to someone at the minute, it's not to do with aliens, it's to do with paranormal, but they won't give me, or they won't let me use their name, which I completely understand. And as frustrating as it is, it's also a big tick in the credibility column. So, I mean, I'll get you both your opinions on this. I mean, Steve, start with you on this one.
I agree. You can usually tell, you know, they don't seek the limelight, you know.
Yeah.
I know, of course, you know, there's a platform for this for certain individuals, but you know what? It's just so hard to deter. One thing I can say, I think when Dave says about maybe pop seeding somewhere else, it's possible. It's very feasible. I mean, you know, we're talking about a super advanced technological race that are conducting animal mutilations and human experiments and stuff. Considering how old this phenomenon is, you think, well, they must have cracked it by now. I mean, surely even us humans would have cracked that by now, considering, you know, I mean, I know we give it enough time. And that's what I don't understand. It's like, well, why is it still happening? Have they not sussed something out? Well, what is it for? I'm not, like Dave said, I'm not seeing any direct impact with humanity. So is it for us or for someone else? I just don't know. But human emotion, yeah, I can kind of be in that as quite being a bit of a puzzle. You know, it's like trying to get a scientist to sit down and understand the human emotions of a fish, for an example. I mean, come on. I mean, it's just going to be take forever trying to work that out. Yeah, I can understand that being probably more problematic than the actual physicality of human cloning or genetic things and things like that. I think it's what goes on here is probably a little bit more profound and could take time.
Yeah. I mean, Dave, you mentioned seeding, so I'd like to get your thoughts on this, and Steve after as well, because I don't think we spoke about this before, actually. Some people say, some researchers say that space in itself is just a huge lab. And essentially the planet is a petri dish and humans are part of these experiments. This will explain visitations in the ancient past if we accept for a moment that they happened. And they almost certainly did on one level or another. Off the back of that, some people go further and say that humanity is almost like a prison species. We were kind of dumped here. And they Ellis Silver, I think, really got into this. And he was saying, if you look at our warlike nature, how aggressive we are, generally speaking, it would make sense that we would be dumped here thousands of years ago and then left to see how we developed. And this is why these people are coming back. This is why they might be seen in other parts of the universe.
Yeah,
I know that sounds, again, I've said this a lot today, I know it sounds like complete sci-fi, but, you know, this compelling argument has been made. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's a possibility. I mean, all it takes is for them to have cracked interstellar travel. Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, one of the biggest arguments for the outer space thing is, I'd say, I don't know the exact statistic, but I'd imagine over 90% of intelligent people these days believe in life elsewhere in the universe.
Yeah.
Maybe it's lower than that, but maybe I'll be surprised. But I don't know if you've seen any actual stats on that, guys. But like, I'm sure it's a high proportion of people probably entertain the notion of alien species somewhere outside in the universe.
Yeah.
Not everybody might suggest advanced alien species. They might think that there's sort of plankton and that sort of thing, and other species, but maybe not highly evolved species. But it stands to reason, if evolution has taken the course it has on our planet, then why wouldn't it do that on other planets?
Yeah.
with with the same kind of and as you say, animals can survive in extremely challenging environments here on the planet, right down in the deep sea next to volcanic vents and that sort of thing to get life. So it doesn't necessarily have to be massively hospitable for life to evolve. And then obviously you could get life that lives off something completely different and doesn't require oxygen and water. That's just what our scientists' view of what's required for life is. It might be that there's complete new things that we haven't yet discovered. So there's probably life all over the place, but obviously the vast distances of space, and it's quite interesting to see skeptical viewpoints, and the only reason they don't believe that they're off-worlders is because of that distance. And right back to Stanton Friedman has said that's a ridiculous notion. It's using our current understanding of physics and chemistry to try to explain that. And if these individuals are like, let's say this other species is a million years ahead of us, well, I mean, the rate of our technological growth every single year at the moment is massive. So in a million years, who knows what will have cracked?
Yeah.
And if we crack the ability to move very, very far in space, I mean, you can bring it a lot closer in than that, can't we? I mean, if there were aliens on the moon, and some people believe that there may have been, of course, that's a whole talk in itself, yeah. But when they went to the moon, or did they? Yeah, another talk there. It's one of those things, isn't it? Every single thing you say is in some way linked. Anyway, when they got to the moon, let's say there were aliens living there. Well, they would have seen us as the aliens, and it just so happens that it probably wasn't. It seemed desolate, at least from what we've been told. So, it's just a matter of distance, isn't it? But if they're using far superior technology, maybe they've cracked that and can just jump.
I would have thought so. I mean, you talk about the advanced civilizations with technologies, they would have found, because the biggest problem is the vast distances of space.
Yeah.
But that's our physics and our understanding. But any advanced civilization may have found a way to traverse from one place to another, wormhole technology or whatever, which doesn't even come into the equations about how far. It probably doesn't even matter under certain circumstances if that can happen. Some scientists now are actually look at stars, and could stars be used as jump spots, because there's huge amounts of gravity around stars. Could it cause could these be used as trackways of wormholes of the energies around stars to be traversed from one star to another in the blink of an eye? We've got to try and wrap our heads around, the possibilities of physics that it lies outside the physics of where we understand at this moment. But things are changing because we're getting into quantum physics and all sorts of different things. So our current understanding of physics is changing. Where, like Dave said, where we're going to be just in 1,000 years time, let alone a million years time.
Less than that.
It's hard to even imagine.
Quantum physics, we would have thought would be mainstream science would be speaking in the way that they are. About literally contemplating multiverses and simulations, and they're speaking about. I'm not saying I buy into that, but it's clear quantum physics is going to play such a role in unwrapping a lot of this stuff. Now, I'm conscious of time, Dave, so obviously we're going to wrap this up, but we can't let you go. And I asked this of anyone who's in the UFO, in UFO research. Disclosure. I think most people agree that it's a farce on one level or another, but what are your thoughts on that? Where do you see it going? Do you think we'll find anything out, or do you think it's just a big smoke screen?
It's probably a smoke screen. They keep on hitting brick walls. I think there are people, especially across in the States. We haven't seen much across in the UK. There's not even any real statements that have come out from the Ministry of Defence in recent years, even about what's going on in the States. They're keeping very close-lipped for very valid reasons. But in the States, there are clearly members of US Congress who I believe are genuinely interested in the reality of this subject. They've seen some evidence that points towards things being pulled over their eyes and clandestine groups within the Pentagon doing their own thing and going without oversight. And they've seen the reality of that, and they're trying to delve. They're trying to get to the answers. But what we found is they are hitting the same brick walls that most of the public hit, which immediately shows that it's outside. Because many members of the public probably think that Congress is it. Right? They've got all the answers. They're the ones who call the shots. Yeah, but clearly
No.
the evidence is that is not the case with this subject. And I mean, that obviously points towards what we've believed for decades, that it's very, very high secret level, and it's kept separate and compartmentalized all over the place. So very few people have the true full picture. A lot of people have little bits of the puzzle here and there. May have seen hints or may have heard from somebody else that they fully believe that, and this sort of thing. And because it's broken up like that, it's very easy for them to keep this cover up going. There's many reasons for the cover up. I don't think that they would willingly come forward and say, "Oh, it's all real, everybody." Yeah, it's like opening this ridiculously big can of worms. You've got like the darker elements of the subject, like the contact phenomena and mutilation phenomena, etc. They have to explain all that, and it would cause a degree of panic.
Yeah,
a lot of people would be able to cope with it, but it would cause a lot of panic. I don't think that's the real reason. I think the main reason is for weaponization of the technology and using it to their own gains and their own advancement. They wouldn't want to share that technology with the planet. They'd have no reason to want to do that. And also they would have to admit that they'd been lying to everybody for decades, and there'd be a massive loss of trust at that moment. Obviously, they probably already have issues with it, and many people don't trust them anyway, despite that. But if they were to come forward and make statements like that, so unless a lot more of the public push towards asking for this and making it happen, forcing it to happen, it's not going to happen. And at the end of the day, UFO subject or UAP subject, you want to call it that, still very, very fringe. There's still a very small percentage of people look into it to any great depth. So it remains on the fringes with lots of different viewpoints. A lot of people say they believe in the subject. A lot of people say they believe in it, but they don't genuinely want to nail it to the mass that they do.
No.
They just follow a lot of stuff online and listen to the stories and read them and probably think, wow, it's like X-Files in real life. And it genuinely is, right? There's some really interesting stuff's been going on in recent years across in the States, and I have been keeping close eye on it, but I've also seen those who want the answers hitting roadblocks in exactly the same way that everybody else does. They'll only disclose if they want to, and they've got no real need to at this point in time.
No, I totally agree. Totally couldn't put it any easier, to be honest. I mean, go back from the days of Project Blue Book, public demand on answers. Well, we all know that and how that ended. Hynek realizing that there's definitely something going on, and had to go once he had to leave. Once he left, had to go and formulate his own Q-Force, his establishment because he knew. But the fact is that there's public demand, just as he was for Blue Book, and his public demand and all these. So you go back to the Citizens Against ufology movement, and there's been so many different ones at high level. Which have been Citizens Against Ufology and all sorts of different ones. And now we're caught up to the UAP hearings. Yeah, you do just hit a brick wall. And when starts getting interesting, it's like, oh, well, let's take it to a skiff because we can't tell the general public. And it's got stamped national security. It's just too easy. It's too easy a scapegoat. I think, if they were going to disclose this, then, and I think it also, if it was just as simple, oh, we've got some visitors coming from another planet, maybe we might have got some form of disclosure. I think it's very complex. I think there's a lot more to this, and of course the profiteering and now private profiteering through not government establishments, but we're talking private organisations, defence contractors and things like that, which are getting quids in on certain things like technologies and stuff. The profiteering is huge, and I just don't think anybody really is going to put a dint in trying to make sure disclosure is going to happen. But you know what? We all say, well, they are answerable to the general public, but there's just not enough of us.
No.
And like Dave said, it still remains even into the areas of the fringe still. So we can never do anything if we can't even unite ourselves. So I think that's probably one of the biggest problems we have.
Yeah.
I think like Dave said as well, I think there's a lot to be said for the weaponization of this stuff. I mean, it's pretty clear. We've spoke about this before, Steve. It's pretty clear when you go back through history. I think the Bell transistor is the best example of this, where there's no natural progression from what came before to what came with the Bell transistor. And obviously there's loads of rumors and conspiracies that was based on Roswell technology or similar recovered craft. So I think there's a lot of that are involved in it. I actually think, though, that if they just did come out and say, this is what we know, everything's available for you, I don't think the general public would believe them. And I think they are completely to blame for that.
In those days
they've
over.
created distrust. They've created this, we know and you don't. So I think they're going to have a problem, regardless of which way they attempt to turn with this. You know, whether they come clean or they decide to keep it to themselves. So certainly going to be an interesting few years. I do believe that. I mean, but yeah, I mean, look, Dave, we could carry on all night with this sort of stuff. It's been absolutely fascinating speaking to you. So, what have you got coming up? I mean, are we working on books? Have you got lectures? What's coming up for you in the next few months?
So I'm speaking at Parameet at the start of November. So that's coming up. And I've been working now for a number of months on a interactive database of all of the cases that have been investigated by my group since 2007. It's very, very detailed. I didn't want it to be just high level, so there's over 100 columns of information for each experience. So this isn't just kind of type of craft and location and weather. It's way more detailed than that. And I believe that it's going to get some fascinating patterns are going to come out through that. It's just a hell of a lot of work populating all the data. Once the data element has been finally completed and I'm up to date with it, which I started back in 2007, right? You know, then it wouldn't be this now. And then I intend to build a front end with lots of different charts and that sort of thing, which will keep a tally. And then all I need to do is continuously add new experiences, and all the stats will shift. And then we're gonna get that. I'm initially building it in Excel, but I intend to kind of move it to a more professional interactive database element that will be built into the Birmingham UFO Group site. That's the end goal for it. Still got a long way to go at the moment. I'm about sort of halfway through the years. The trouble is with these cases, it's not just the fact that we've dealt with hundreds of cases. It's the fact that many of those cases are multiple experiences, sometimes massive, like sometimes like 40, 50 experiences with the biggest cases I looked into. And each experience in its own right is interesting, and you can't just group it up into one row. Every single experience has to be documented individually from one another. So there's cryptid cases in there, there's a paranormal activity, there's a psychic phenomena, all of it is in there. And hopefully you'll be able to see the crossovers and feed it into AI systems or whatever to work out some interesting statistical patterns. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, that sounds like something right up my street. Both of our streets, like the crossovers, a great word.
Data
anyway, to sum all this sort of stuff up, because there is so much crossover. Dave, thank you ever so much for your time. Thank you for joining us. It's been absolutely fascinating.
Yeah,
it's been great.
I knew it would.
Yeah, no, likewise. It's been absolutely fantastic. So thank you very much, Dave. And thank you guys for joining us. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Follow us on social media and check out the Anomaly Project Podcast.com for further articles, news and information. Until next time, goodbye and take care.